Hi everyone, I'm Arthur Dickins and this is my Rugby Legends podcast. In each episode, I interview an amazing rugby player to get their insight and advice for young rugby players like me who are keen to learn and get better. In this episode, I'm speaking with Dan Biggar, a British Irish Lions and Wales fly half. Dan is definitely a legend of the game with 112 caps for Wales and over 15-year Test career. Has won 3 Six Nations titles and a Grand Slam with Wales, also captaining the side. Dan has been on 2 Lions tours, making 3 Test appearances in South Africa, and he's a really nice guy. I hope you find Dan's knowledge and wisdom as helpful as I did. Enjoy. Other sports did you play growing up, and at what age did you give them up for rugby?
So I played a lot of football. Football was my first love when I was younger. I was a big Man United fan, which was a lot more fun back then than it is now as a child. But I probably gave it up when I got to comprehensive school, first year of secondary school, which I would have been. What would I been then? 11? Is that 11? I've lost it. It was that long ago. But about 11, I gave football up and concentrated on rugby, which hopefully was the right decision.
What position did you play in football?
I was a centre forward, so I was goal hanging up front, sneaking in a couple of tap-ins and bits and pieces like that. But I loved it. Fair play, I did. I loved it. Do you play football as well?
Oh, I did play, yeah, when I was 10 years old, but then I kind of gave it up because I was going for club rugby. So, Dan, what made you choose rugby over these other sports?
When I was younger, I suppose what I didn't like about football was that we would turn up on a Saturday, Sunday morning, whatever it was, and you'd get dropped off in your kit, you'd play the match, you'd go back in the car in your with my mum, and then you'd end up just going home. So there was nothing afterwards, nothing before, etc. So for rugby, for me, when I started, you meet up a little bit before, you'd spend a bit of time in the clubhouse, get changed together in the changing rooms, and then you'd sort of have your sausage and chips afterwards, and boys would watch maybe another rugby game on the telly at the club, or play some pool or darts at the club and things like that. So I loved like the social element, and that's why I think I chose rugby overall, because I was probably a little bit better at rugby anyway, but I enjoyed the social element and the just, yeah, spending a bit more time with my friends, as not just sort of getting in the car and going home straight away.
Same here, really. And Dan, when did you know you were going to make it professional?
Do you know what? That's a really good. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that question before. People have always asked me like different sort of variations on that, but I do you know what? That's a really good question. I think I knew that I was good enough from a young age to make certainly to play professionally, but I think probably when I started for probably my first season of senior rugby. So I played for the Ospreys, who were based in Swansea, my hometown club. And I came into the first team with a lot of sort of first, I suppose, internationals, All Blacks, Irish internationals, Shane Williams, Gavin Henson, all these guys, James Hook. And I felt like I wasn't intimidated or scared of them. So I felt like I fitted in quite nicely, and then played quite well. And I thought, well, I belong here rather than just making the numbers up. If that does that make sense?
Yeah. And what was the facet of rugby which was your particular strength growing up?
Always the kick inside. Yeah, kick inside was. I tell you what, you're using far too many posh words for my liking. I'm not used to these words. You're incredible. Fair play. I think the kick inside was always my strength, and whether that was touch kicking or up and unders or goal kicking, I think the kick inside of the game was always a strength, and I based my game around that. And I always try to. People always say work on your weaknesses, but I actually I spent more time working on my strength to make it like, I suppose like a super strength rather than just being quite good at something. I wanted to be world class at it. And then everything else would kind of fit in, and I could, get better at passing or running or catching or whatever it was. But kicking was definitely the biggest sort of area of my game I'd call a strength. Yeah.
That's very interesting. My rules rugby coach for club, he doesn't really like us kicking, which is
Oh,
a bit annoying, but
Yeah, it's not easy because especially at a younger age when you're growing the game and learning about the game, I think I like that as a process and as an idea because you want to get more players with skills and good catching and running and everything. But I think as you get a little bit older and as you get a bit more professional, you realize that there is a huge part for kicking in the game of rugby. But I agree, I think it's a good call. I think you just make sure you enjoy. Don't worry too much about kicking at your young age at the minute. Just embrace it, learn the skills, enjoy it, and yeah, it's not a bad shout that from your coach.
Meeting you inspired me to be a fly half. Which players inspired you growing up, and what was most inspiring about them?
So I sort of started getting into rugby really when, and this is hard to say as a Welshman, but when England were just about to win the World Cup type of thing. So Wales weren't particularly that good when I was young growing up. So it wasn't easy to have somebody really to put on a pedestal. But my mum actually took me to Australia when I was in, well, 2003. So what I'd have been 14, and we went to Australia and we watched the quarterfinals, semi-finals, and final of the World Cup. And we watched three games: England, Wales, England, France, and England, Australia. And I was there when Johnny Wilkinson dropped the goal to win England the World Cup in 2003 in the stadium. And I remember I probably wasn't alone at that point, but I probably I think I remember thinking to myself, it didn't matter if you were Welsh, English, Irish, South African, Australian. I think everybody who was playing rugby at that point wanted to be Johnny Wilkinson. So I think for me, I had an interest in rugby at that stage, but he kind of made me really he was a bit of a hero. And I always find it quite strange because now I played against Johnny when I came through. Now I've got his number in my phone and we send each other the odd text and we've done a few podcasts together and things. And if you'd have told me in 2003 when I was sitting in that stand that I'd have Johnny Wilkinson's number and he was calling me mate in a WhatsApp or something, I would said you must have been you must have drunk had too many beers that night. But it's a really cool experience to be able to be as close to someone like that who I really thought as a hero and an inspiration growing up, yeah.
That's so cool. And when did you know you were a fly half was your position? Was it your decision or did it come from a coach?
So I originally went to my district trials as a scrum half when I was 10 or 11. And I think there was a little bit of a mix up and I ended up slotting into, I think the coach thought I was trialing out for the number 10 position. So I ended up being an outside half from whatever it was, 10 or 11 years old. And I never really looked back because I quite liked the position of authority. I quite liked being in charge of the team. I quite liked now and again shouting at one or two players, but not that often. Don't follow me in that aspect. You're far better than that. But I liked the position. I liked the ability to manage the game, be in control, and I also quite like the pressure of the position. And I know sometimes, I think that's what helped me so much when I've been playing professionally is that I've quite liked the pressure of being a number 10 and having a lot of the calls, the structures, the pressure on your shoulders. So yeah, I think when I was that stage, I was always a 10 really, and I never really wanted to change from that because I liked having that authority and pressure on me, I suppose, as well, which I liked.
Right, that's very interesting.
What's your position?
I play fly half as well.
Okay. So do you if I'm asking you a question now, do you like the idea of having that pressure and as you get older and things like that, or do you like just going about your business quite quietly?
No, I quite like the pressure, gets the adrenaline pumping for games. Yeah, I really like it.
And I tell you, if I can give you a little bit of advice as a number 10, do it your way. Don't try to, take bits from other people or other professionals or your mates in school or whoever. But I think you've got to make sure that you do it your way, and you've got to make sure that because as soon as you don't do it your way, people will know straight away that you're trying to be someone else. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So put your personality and your character onto the position and onto the team, and you'll get a lot more from it.
Thanks so much.
Well,
How do you cope with your nerves for a really big game?
I used to be quite bad at the start. I've always, whenever I answer a question like this, I kind of split it up into three periods in my career when I was right at the start. the middle stage, and the end. So at the end, I've learned to deal with things a lot better, and I didn't tend to get too nervous. But in that middle period, where I've kind of built up a bit of a reputation and people expect you to play well, and there's big games, lots of pressure, I found that was really hard because I found like the expectation on me. I didn't want to let people down, or I didn't want people to think, oh, he's not as good as maybe he thinks or what we've written about and things. So I always found a good method for me about coping with my nerves was not building up too much in the week. So I'd always be really relaxed up until about probably a couple of hours before kickoff, when you start to think about getting your tracksuit on, or putting your suit on, or packing your bag in the hotel to go to the game. And I'd always sort of start thinking I'd always want to have like good first action to settle my nerves. But I think I was always really good at just being as relaxed as possible, not overthinking the moment, the game, or the pressure. I always used to love sitting. So where the posts are, each team has a half to warm up in.
Yeah, yeah.
So we'd all in the Principality Stadium, we'd always warm up on the left. And what I always used to love doing before games was just sitting down up against the post protector after I finished my kicking warm up and bits and pieces. So you have about 5 minutes spare before you came into the team huddle and started warming up. And I always used to sit down there and just take it in and realize how lucky I was. And that used to be a really big thing for me. I used to think like how many people would want to swap places with me right now. So I tended not to think of it as like a pressure or nerves. I tried to think of it as like real excitement, and very lucky to be in that position, that probably everybody in the stadium coming to watch and millions at home on TV would change places with me. So I tried to put it into that perspective rather than pile a load of pressure on myself. You know what's funny as well, because a lot of people would come up, a lot of my players and my team members and staff members would come up and say, "Are you all right?" And I'd say, "Yeah, I'm just taking it in, just enjoying it." And they'd sort of, one of our fitness coaches who I've got a good relationship with, he'd always say, after he see me do that a few times, he'd always say, "I know you're ready when you're up against the post protector, staying nice and calm and taking it all in." So yeah, I enjoyed that. So maybe that could be something that you could take it all in when you get to playing some big matches.
And Dan, how do you bounce back from a bad game?
Well, I've had plenty of experience of that, so I should be able to answer this quite well. What my personality has always been, I'm not that bothered about what people think. So I've always been quite single-minded in that sense, and still almost stubborn in a way. I actually quite like not playing well in it, because especially when you're playing professionally, then there's a lot of media or there's a lot of talk about, oh, Dan Biggar didn't play very well. There's a lot of pressure on him next game, next week, etc. And I quite like that pressure of being written off, or being rated poorly in the newspaper, or by the media afterwards. So I'd always use that as a bit of fuel to make sure that I didn't let that one bad game become two bad games, or three bad games, and more. But I was always really good at switching off as well. So when I'd walk through my front door after playing, or you'd get home, I'd always switch off and I'd never be too down on myself when I played poorly, but also I'd never get too high or carried away when I played really well as well. I was always kind of quite level, and I think that helped me manage my emotions when I played poorly, or when I played well. So I never really, I didn't treat the two any different in a sense, and I think that helped me. If I played poorly, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to show you next week. I'm going to play well, and prove you all wrong. And again, like we talked about earlier, it's quite nice having that pressure on you, because it's another opportunity to prove people wrong again, and play. Yeah, and you know what it's like when you play in that number 10 position. There's a lot of eyes on you. Everyone looks to you for the right call, the right play, and I kind of think I like that added pressure as well as the jersey itself.
Yeah, same here. And
Yeah.
Dan, who's the best player you've ever played with or against, and why?
Oh, well, that is a good question. I think the best player from like just an all round, he's got a bit of everything player I've played with is probably Cheslin Cole. I played with him for a year in Toulon, and he was just incredible. I mean, pace, power, ability to score amazing tries, kicking, even his goal kicking is pretty good. And yeah, he's done a little bit for South Africa, hasn't he? So he probably as a whole package was probably the best player I've played with. Yeah, I'd say that. And then playing against, I think only really the last couple of years I've sort of noticed this one, but probably like Antoine Dupont has been just absolutely amazing. Like again, he's kind of like someone who just can do absolutely. I think he's up there with one of the best of all times. So we always used to not we always used to yeah, like when we do an analysis, we'd be like focusing on how this player and how can we potentially target this player. But we never used to analyze him because he was just so good at everything. If you marked up his right foot, he'd end up sending a left foot kick into the corner, or if you overcompensated on one facet of his game, he'd just do the complete opposite. So I think best player I've played with, Colby, and best player I've played against would probably be Dupont. Yeah.
What was the best piece of advice their coaches gave you?
Best bit of advice I've been given from is can I choose two things because they're slightly.
Yeah.
Is that all right with you?
Yeah.
So the first thing I got told when I was coming through, it was from an Australian coach called Scott Johnson. So he was coach at the Ospreys. He did a bit of coaching with Wales previously and Australia after it. And we were playing Leicester actually, and Leicester obviously have got quite a big ground and quite a big following. So we were in the hotel room, hotel meeting room beforehand, and he stood up in front of us. And normally before the meeting, you kind of before the match in the meeting, you're kind of talking a lot about tactics and how are we going to play, what's our first call, like etc. But he sort of went really different, and he said there was 20, I think it was 24,000 people who were in the stadium that day for Leicester against the Ospreys, and he said you should never ever feel like pressured going into a game, or there's no pressure on you going into the game today. You've got 24,000 people who have worked all week, earned money, earned their jobs, etc., and they're choosing to spend money to come and watch you guys on a Saturday afternoon, and that's what they're choosing to do with their time and money. And after that, I kind of thought, well, that's an amazing way to look at things. It's kind of like it's a privilege to play, and people are kind of like coming to watch you, and that's kind of like made you settle down and think think how lucky you are. So that was the first bit, and then the second bit was probably Warren Gatlin actually, who me and him had an okay relationship, not a brilliant one, but he sort of said selection's only one person's opinion. So it's like if you've got a coach, you could have 100 coaches and 99 think you're the best thing since sliced bread. But if one of them, who happens to be the guy actually coaching you or picking the team, doesn't, then he's not going to pick you and you're not going to play. So I kind of looked at it like that and thought, well, sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you get unlucky, but basically selection is only one person's opinion. And yeah, I thought that was a really good bit of advice as well, that when times do get tough or you do miss out on selection, it's quite a nice thing to fall back on as well.
It's very useful. And Dan, last question. You played a very successful Wales team, also for the Lions in South Africa. What makes a great team?
You've got some brilliant questions. Yeah, this could be a real career for you, I think. I generally think a good team it's got an environment where it allows you to get better each day. I've been in a lot of environments where you just turn up, do the training, go home, come back the next day, and it's almost like you're just counting down the minutes or the hours until you leave training. Whereas other environment, especially that Wales environment we were in, was kind of everyone wanted to get better each day. Everyone was improving. There was nobody sort of getting out training quickly. And also we had a group who quite liked being challenged as well, whether that was through coaches or players or staff, whatever. We quite liked challenging each other. So not arguing or having confrontation for the sake of it, but we quite liked being honest with each other. And if things weren't good enough, or if we felt players were slacking and not working hard enough or whatever, we'd be able to sort of call them out and hold them to account. So I think the two things I think are really important in a team, a successful team, is the ability to have that confrontation in a way and being able to sort of hold each other to account and create an environment where every session, meeting, game, you aim to get better. And that comes generally from the top, from the coach, that sets that environment, and it's a bit of a reflection of him as a person as well.
What are you most proud of in your rugby career?
I'm actually my wife and my younger son are in the room. I've just come in now, but and this is I'm when I get asked this, I've just announced my retirement as well, and I'm incredibly proud of playing for Wales, the Lions, the trophies, and everything like that, and the amount of time I've played for. But I'm actually the thing I'm most proud about is being able to give my family like opportunities in life. So we live in, live in a lovely part of the world in the south of France. We enjoyed some brilliant times in Northampton. We've traveled the world. We've been in loads of stadiums, etc. And I think for me, that's probably the thing that I'm most grateful for, and the thing I'm most proud about my career is that I've done it for so long and been able to keep going. And I really like the fact that I've been able to, when I look back, and I know it's maybe not a standard answer to what maybe other people may say, but I'm really that's the thing that stands out for me is being able to give them a bit of an opportunity in life to experience different things and provide for them. And yeah, I think that's probably the thing I'm most proud about and the biggest thing that I've achieved in rugby in a sense.